Let's have a look at this first chapter and its structure. Basically, it's divided into 4 parts. The first being the shark description. In the very beginning, after you have the sexual intercourse, after there is the shark attack depiction, and finally looking for the missing woman at 5 o'clock in the morning. But the first chapter is divided into 2 paragraphs. Roughly, the first being the shark attack, and the second is the way Tom is looking for Chrissy, who's missing. The first paragraph is the introduction of the shark, which is to me something I would call a naturalist depiction. The shark is never mentioned thus. The word shark doesn't appear at all in the first chapter. It's referred to as the great fish, which is a circumlocution, that is, an indirect way of speaking to stress the size of the animal. In my opinion, it avoids calling by the name of an animal which is already terrifying to collective unconsciousness at the time and still today. The description of the great fish is what I call a taxonomic description, and it's insisting on the details, physical details of an animal, rather than a big description, as I would expect. Surprisingly, the threatening element is described here in a very scientific manner, with lots of exact and precise terms, such as the crescent tail, gills, pectoral fin, primitive brain, and so on and so forth. To some extent, one might feel Bentley is lecturing the viewer about sharks, telling about their long-time adaptation. Feels like a zoologist wrote this. So it was quite weird to me. I was dubitative about the effect of such a literary choice. No imagery, no metaphor to make the shark epic. And it leaves scarce room to imagination. There's only a short comparison of the shark. The writer compares its way of moving in the water to the way a bird would move its wing in the air. But it doesn't bring anything eerie. No, because it focuses on the pectoral fin, instead of, say, equating the shark with a flying supernatural creature. I mean, this would have had a more mystic dimension. The setting and time. It's 1 in the morning, 1 o'clock, very dark, no moon in the June sky. The beach is so white it is shining. The sand reflects the glimmers from the house lights. We don't have the name of the town. The characters. The first 2 characters aren't the main characters. Their names are not given immediately, just like the shark. They are depicted through their actions. They just drank, and the man is definitely drunk. They stepped out of the house and got on the beach. The woman suggests they go swimming to clear the man's head, which he felt unnecessary. Then they have sex, which is quite elided here, inasmuch it's told as, quote, urgent ardor on the cold sand, unquote. Followed by, afterward the man lay back and closed his eyes. So to this point, and it matters later as I'll get to it in a moment, sexual intercourse isn't a person per se. The characters are despicable for the behavior they display. Then the woman still wants to go swimming. So that's basically the 2 characters that we are introduced to. Now a little remark here. Why swimming after sex? The depiction of the woman is pretty neutral so far, and the first interpretation about her personality happens now with the question, why does she still want to go for a swim after sex? Well, it really seems symbolic, because who would go swimming alone in a pitch dark sea at 1 AM when everybody is sleeping, just had sex, and the water is freaking cold? Well, one reading would be that the woman wants to purify herself, as if what she did was wrong. Now the central part is the passage of the attack. The woman tries to call the sleeping guy one last time before she got into the water. Her coming in the water is well described, by the way. Maybe to give a threatening flash forward, quote, "A small wave crashed into her knees," unquote. Once again, the narrator switches to the shark's point of view, and it's depicted from this zoological point of view. Quote, "It sensed a change in the sea's rhythm, a series of thin canals filled with mucus and dotted with nerve endings, etc." Basically, the shark detects the stimulus and wants to find this prey, so there are more motion verbs like the sweeps quickened, thrusting the giant body forward. Well, in my maybe harsh opinion, this is when the only interesting image happens in the incipit. When we have this phrase, quote, "with a speed that agitated the tiny phosphorescent animals in the water and caused them to glow, casting a mantle of sparks over the fish," unquote. Here I can picture the great fish as shiny, looking like a kind of aquatic god sparkling in its environment. I like that image because it's not didactic, it's not a naturalist depiction of an animal. There's another dimension to it. So the situational description is very accurate. The shark is 12 feet to the side and 6 feet below the surface, which again kills the effort to imagine, in my opinion. But anyway, the woman first feels a wave that lifts her up and eases her down. She stops and resumes swimming. The shark now feels her way better and gets close to the surface, and at last the fin and tail break water. The woman feels fear without exactly knowing why, but again it's described in a very factual way. Quote, "Adrenaline shot through her trunk and her limbs, generating a tingling heat," etc. Interestingly, before getting bitten, there's a false hope coming as the woman sees the lights in the house and thinks she sees someone passing by the windows. I think this emphasizes her feeling of aloneness at that point. Yet, the shark suddenly was upon her. What's clever is not having used the verbs attack or bite. I admit it. I think this is a brilliant ellipse. The woman actually felt no pain, just a violent tug on her right leg. And that's when horror strikes her as us and her realize that she can't find her foot. She feels nauseous and dizzy and just finds a hub of bone and tattered flesh. Pain and panic struck together. She screamed a guttural cry of terror. Then the fish swallows the limb without chewing and pretty soon homes on the stream of blood, flushing from the woman's femoral artery. Pause here. Femoral artery bleeding, well, this is another medical explanation which is awkwardly done and too much to me. Not sure that the reader wants to know why she's bleeding from medical explanation, because it's obvious. And then it hurtles from below, jaws agape. Yes, the title is mentioned here. The power of the shark is compared to a locomotive which knocks the woman out of the water. The jaws snapped around her torso, and the description of horror is very graphic here, very gory, as you can see. The mess ensues. Quote, "spewing foam and blood and phosphorescence in a gaudy shower," unquote. The corpse fell apart. There are shreds of flesh, a dissipating cloud of blood, morsels, pieces finally drift away and end in the surf. Again, lots of natural history here, with the accurate description of the shark shapes, such as conical head, triangular teeth. It's not very mysterious to me doing that. So it's a very factual attack scene. Very realistic and graphic, but from a literary stance. It's not loaded with connotations, not much figurative language here, but basically a sensational imagery, invoking touch, taste, and smell. The tone is horrific with all the disgusting details. Next comes the aftermath of the shark attack. So what does that passage bring exactly? This is the second paragraph, and it deals with the character of the man who wakes up shivering at 5 a.m., trying to figure out where the woman went as she had left her clothes on the beach. After looking in every room of the house, he considers the possibility of an accident and wakes the host up. That's when we learn that the woman's name is Chrissy and the guy's name is Tom. It is implied as Tom blushes that Chrissy might have been having fun in the Henkel's room in the house, and Tom thinks Chrissy, quote, could be a little weird, unquote. Here I assume that Bentley portrayed Chrissy as a woman having a promiscuous sexual behavior, and therefore she was kind of punished by a new kind of villain, that is the great fish. Next, Tom begins to think she had an accident, and the host, Jack, decides to call the police. And the last statement, I don't know what time the police in this town go to work, he said, but I guess this is as good a time as any to find out. This statement really puts forward the idea that the police will have a lot of responsibilities in this case, that is, the main protagonist to come, Chief Brody. Conclusion. This incipit is a passage told by omniscient, demiurge narrator. We know more than the characters, but I think we know too much. Although the word shark never occurs, it has a thorough feel of realism, as if a camera would film a documentary on a sea predator. It's very factual. It's like a study of behaviors. In 1971, Bentley started researching all possible material regarding sharks, and I guess his intentions were to inform as well as to entertain when he wrote the book. However, the movie put us in the character's shoes because we aren't informed at all about the physiology or even the shark. So in the beginning of the movie, the suspense is greater. But again, it's only my opinion. Furthermore, Bentley uses some basic themes from Gothic literature, the old-time horror genre. For example, darkness, it's nighttime, the femme fatale, first she turns you on, then she turns on you because she disappears to Tom. The role of woman, to me, social norms, being an outsider because she seems like a free woman, and it is called deviance from the social norm because Chrissy is weird. And another trope of the Gothic literature, of course, is the monstrous villain, which punishes Chrissy in the beginning, but it is highly implied. I think, despite the fact that there are those elements from the Gothic literature, they are contradicted by the absence of mystery, because of all those naturalist descriptions. The way it is told is very similar to what a scientist would do. So why not calling her Chrissy at first? Because there's no attempt of sympathy, I guess. It feels we are observing an experiment, as if we were watching a documentary, as I said. So this really made me wonder. I felt perplexed that the extract looked like a neutral scientific description rather than a text relying on suspense, the unknown nature of the disruptive element, and a more elaborate imagery. So yes, we can easily figure out what it's like being bitten with that extract, and it's horrific. but ultimately I expected something more mysterious, because I was biased knowing the movie by heart. Anyway, this iconic passage was entertaining, but it lacks mystery, I'm repeating myself, and it lacks literary tips to me not to leave my imagination scanty.